Man, there's something about spooky kids movies that I really love to watch around the Halloween season. It's probably because I'm very nostalgic about Halloween from my childhood. So movies like this, these creepy Halloween-y films made about kids, for kids, they really remind me of my childhood. And a lot of them I'm literally nostalgic about for watching them when I was a little kid. So today we're going to talk about my top 15 kids horror movies of all time. What's going on, my friends? Welcome again to the Cobwebs channel. My name is Daniel, and yeah, I'll admit it, I really love kids horror movies. And with this list, I am trying to draw a line between family-friendly, kid-appropriate movies and kids movies. I think there's a difference between a movie that a kid could watch, which is dependent on the kid, and of course by the parents, it's totally subjective, and movies that were actually made for a kid audience. So some family-friendly movies that I eliminated are Gremlins, Poltergeist, Beetlejuice, and of course, the Universal Monsters. The Universal Monsters were actually my gateway into horror movies as a kid, but they weren't literally made specifically for a kid audience, and these movies I don't think were either. You know, they're kind of made for everybody. So the movies we're talking about today, these are kids movies. At number 15 is Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman from 2000. Alvin and the Chipmunks have a new neighbor move next door named Lawrence Talbot. Surely he can't be anything spooky, right? And as Alvin is trying to figure out if he's a monster or not, he is suspended from participating in the school play of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Theodore is brought in to replace him, who seems to be going through some wolf-like changes. I loved Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman when I was a kid, and the other one, Meet Frankenstein, which is not on the list because I actually don't think it's near as good. It's fun, it's nostalgic, but this is definitely the way better movie. The way I would describe this film is it is basically the Wolfman meets Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde meets Fright Night meets Teen Wolf, because Theodore is becoming the werewolf in this, and it really plays out exactly like Teen Wolf, where he's becoming cooler and more confident at school. And meanwhile, the next door neighbor is basically Jerry Dandridge, but he's a werewolf. But I really do dig this movie. It's fun. It's funny. It's actually got good musical numbers. The Wolfman is a legit threat in the movie. Like, he's not cute and cuddly because this is a kid's movie. He's a pretty scary werewolf, and I really do enjoy that. And Alvin the Chipmunks characters, they're just classic. At number 14, Ernest Scared Stupid from 1991. Well-intentioned but eternally bumbling, Ernest P. Worrell accidentally releases an evil troll from its sacred tomb. As the troll goes on a rampage across town, Ernest and the local kids have to save the town from mass destruction. This is what I'm sad to say I did not see when I was a kid. I didn't see any Ernest films when I was a kid. I remember seeing the covers at the video stores and everything, but thinking they just looked really dumb. It's just got this grown man making goofy faces on the cover, and I was like, I don't want to watch that. That looks stupid. Well, stupid. Ernest Scared Stupid. But no, this movie is actually really fun. I've seen it now a couple of times as an adult, and I super enjoy it. I fully expected Ernest to be an annoying character. He's not. Jim Varney is fantastic in this role. He is so fun. He is so lovable. I love all his faces and his weird voices and his impressions that he does throughout. It's just a total blast. The kids are also really likable in this, and the kids are well empowered in the movie. You know, I think that really appeals to kids when they watch a movie, that they see kids, you know, able to go out and save the day and not just have to get helped out by grown-ups. So that's really cool. And the troll, the special effects are fantastic. This has got to be like one of the best troll movies of all time. The effects are actually done by the Kyoto brothers, who also did Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And there are some of the actual Killer Clowns puppets that were used and repurposed into trolls in this movie, from what I understand, which is awesome because Killer Clowns is great. That's another one that I would call kid appropriate mostly, but not necessarily a kid's movie. Now, if I had seen Ernest Scared Stupid when I was a kid and had the nostalgia for it, it might even be higher, but as it is, I really do enjoy this movie. Number 13, Something Wicked This Way Comes from 1983. Based on the Ray Bradbury book by the same name, this is about two young boys in a small American town who encounter a creepy circus which comes into town, Mr. Dark and his Autumn people, who are granting wishes to the townsfolk who are living with regrets. But as the circus gets darker and darker, can these two kids save the day? This is one of those movies that I think you can actually argue is maybe more of a family movie than a kid's movie, because it actually is pretty dark and it's got some creepy stuff. But I think the fact that it totally focuses on two kids makes it a kid's movie, and it's a really, really good one. Phenomenal small town in the fall atmosphere. I talked about this in my previous video talking about fall movies. Man, the atmosphere is just so good. And I love love Jonathan Pryce as Mr. Dark. He is a great, charming, but powerful threat against these kids. This movie just feels extremely nostalgic, almost less like a movie that takes place in the time period of when the kids are kids, but more a movie about adults looking back on childhood very nostalgically. It's a really good movie that was actually made by Disney. Coming in at number 12, we've got Scooby-Doo from 2002. When the Mystery Inc. gang is invited to Spooky Island, a popular amusement park, they soon discover the attractions aren't the only things that are spooky. Strange things are happening, and it's up to Scooby, Shaggy, Daphne, Velma, and Fred to uncover the truth behind the mystery. I'm a big fan of Scooby-Doo in general, and of course there are a ton of direct-to-video animated Scooby-Doo movies, and like you could put any of them on the list, but I decided to put the live-action one. I love this movie. I think it is so much fun. I also like the sequel too, as well, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, but I decided to put the first one on. It's the one that I definitely watch the most. The cast in this movie is absolutely incredible. Of course, Matthew Lillard is the perfect Shaggy, but I feel like he gets all the press. I also love Freddie Prinze Jr. as Fred and Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne. Love the two of them in real life too. They seem to have like one of the most wholesome Hollywood marriages ever. Like they've been together forever and they just seem like wonderful people. You know, Scooby-Doo is a CGI effect. It hasn't necessarily aged the best, but hey, he's basically a cartoon character anyway. This is a very silly movie, so I can pretty easily forgive the bad CGI that comes out quite a bit in this movie. It's just got such a fun feel. It's got a lot of good laughs. I like that it takes place at a spooky amusement park. And I am proud to say that I do have this movie on VHS. Super cool. At number 11, The Halloween Tree from 1993. Also based on a book by Ray Bradbury. This film is about 4 kids who are trying to go out trick-or-treating. And when they go to meet up with one of their friends who's really the leader of their group, they find out that he had to go to the hospital. Then from finding his spirit wandering around, they discover he is dying and they have to go on a quest to save him while also learning about the origins of Halloween. This one is weird for me personally because I did not see it when I was a kid, but I saw the DVD/VHS cover at video stores so much, and like just that cover is so nostalgic for me, and I have no idea why I never rented it, why I never saw it, but this is fantastic. For one thing, the atmosphere, the animation of this is insanely beautiful. The people themselves are a more rough, simple kind of animation, but especially all the backgrounds behind them are so elaborate and gorgeous. Ray Bradbury himself actually does the narration, and wow, the narration is so gorgeous, so literary. I just love how it's written. It just gives you intense nostalgic Halloween vibes just through the narration. It's amazing. And this is a movie that I don't even know if I would count it as a kid's movie if it wasn't animated, because this movie is super, super dark and it deals a lot with death, talks about death in a lot of different ways, a lot of very dark ways. But the kids actually go up to this spooky house and they meet Mr. Moundshroud, who's voiced by Leonard Nimoy, and he is some kind of, I don't know, Halloween spirit who takes them on this journey, and they go back in time to these different countries, and they do learn about the history of things like mummies and witches and skeletons, and it's awesome. Like, I love just diving into the history of Halloween through this film. This is a subject I am super, super interested in. I think the witch segment is my favorite, but these kids are great characters. And the fact that they're going on such a dark and scary journey to save their friend really makes you emotionally invested. A fantastic movie. Cracking into the top 10, we've got Hocus Pocus from 1993. After 300 years of slumber, 3 sister witches are accidentally resurrected in Salem on Halloween night. And it's up to 3 kids and their newfound cat friend to put an end to the witch's reign of terror. Have you guys heard of Hocus Pocus? Yeah, it's kind of an obscure one, but let me try to tell you about this. No, I'm just kidding. This movie has like taken over the conversation around Halloween. Like, it has secretly become the Halloween movie. It's the Halloween holiday movie, you know? Like, it's not really too much of a horror movie, although it is about witches, so I do classify it as a horror film. But it's the holiday movie that, like, anyone can watch, whether they like scary stuff or they don't. It's a movie with a very holiday kind of message about a kid who's not really into the whole Halloween thing and has to learn the spirit of the holiday throughout the course of the film. It's just like a classic Christmas movie, except it happens to be about Halloween. And this is another one I did not grow grow up with. I came to it as an adult, and it's one that's grown on me. I don't know. This movie has wore me down because the first time I saw it, I didn't think that much of it. I thought it was kind of silly and not too good, but I have grown to love it, maybe through process of osmosis. It's everywhere I look during the season, and my wife really likes it, so we watch it fairly frequently, and it's super fun. I love the three witches. They're all great. The kids are super likable. The atmosphere of Salem on Halloween is pretty perfect. Also, shout out Doug Jones as the zombie, probably my favorite character or favorite part of the movie. Number 9, The Haunted Mansion from 2003. Workaholic realtor Jim Evers and his family get a call one night from a mansion owner who wants to sell his house. Once they arrive, a mysterious storm leaves them stranded there, and they have to encounter a bunch of ghosts. Okay, this is a movie that I don't think I can really well justify why I love this movie so much, but I love this movie so much. Now, for one thing, I'm absolutely in love with the Haunted Mansion, the Disney ride. I've been to Disneyland, Disney World several times. I love going on that Haunted Mansion ride several times every time I go. Like, I kind of wish there were more haunted house attractions you could go to that were just like, I don't know, fun and have like spooky ghosts and crystal balls and aren't so much about blood and gore jumping out at you. Although I love that stuff too. I'm just asking for a little variety. And that's what the Disney Haunted Mansion really gives me. And I love the iconography of it. The hitchhiker ghosts, the singing statues, the crystal ball. I just love all that stuff so much. And the cast here is great. I mean, I think Eddie Murphy is terrific in the lead role, but you've also got Jennifer Tilly and Terrence Stamp and Wallace Shawn. Like, everybody is just great here. They've got all the iconography from the original ride. And this is one of my favorite movies during the season, or heck, any season, honestly, to just like throw on, just like in the background. It's such a good vibe. All the Haunted Mansion spookiness you get to look at anytime you look at the screen. Always great. I actually thought that the latest version of the Haunted Mansion that Disney made, I think it was just last year, was pretty good too. It's never going to reach the heights of this movie for me because it's just a little too serious and it's too visually dark. Like, honestly, like I can't just throw it on in the background because like I have to have all the lights out in my house so I can see the darn thing. But this movie looks great from start to finish. And it has a legitimately spooky zombies in a crypt scene. Look out for that. Like, you might be surprised. This movie will go a little farther than you think. Number 8, Monster House from 2006. This is about 3 kids on Halloween who discover the house across the street is not just haunted, it is itself a monster. Absolutely one of the best animated spooky films of all time. Because it's animated, they are really able to go all out on fall Halloween atmosphere. I mean, this has just got some of the best visuals for like a suburban street during Halloween. I just love how this movie looks. It might for a second fool you that it's stop motion, but it's not. It was actually shot using motion capture and CGI animation, kind of in the way like the Polar Express did, except I think this movie looks quite a bit better. And I also think Monster House is a fantastic example for why a movie should be animated, because this movie tells a story you couldn't tell in live action. It's literally about a monster house. If you were to do this movie in live action, I mean, it would just have so much CGI. It would probably just look ridiculous. But this movie, because it's animated, tells that grand story in such an organic way where it always looks terrific. I love the kid characters. They're super, super likable. And the movie just in general has a phenomenal cast. I mean, it's got Steve Buscemi, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Kevin James, John Heder, Jason Lee, Catherine O'Hara. There's so many people in this movie. You'll just recognize voices constantly. Such an incredibly good, intense story, especially by the end, and with some like dark turns, especially in terms of like discovering the mysteries. A really, really good movie. You knew it had to be here at number 7, The Monster Squad from 1987. So this is about a bunch of kids who have a club called the Monster Squad because they're all obsessed with monsters, who discover that the classic monsters actually have resurrected. Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and more. And they're the only ones to stop them. Now, this is one that I really wish I had seen when I was a kid. I don't know why I didn't, but I am glad that I grew up on the original Universal monsters. So I was brought up on those absolute classics, some of the best horror films ever made. But this would have been just like a good alternative to come to just a few years later, you know? But I saw it when I was adult and I really did enjoy it. It's one I've actually come to enjoy more the more I see it. Because, you know, the first time I saw it, it was like, it's a kid's watered down version of the thing that I do love from childhood. But this still absolutely has its place. It's classic 80s kids on bikes genre, you know, E.T., and there are so many movies that are like that. But the versions of the monsters here are mostly pretty good. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Dracula here, but Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Gill Man, the Mummy, they are fantastic. Like, these are really good versions of the monsters. The Frankenstein monster is my favorite. He's played by Tom Noonan, and is he like one of the best Frankenstein monsters? He actually might be. This is just a fun watching kids go out, try to save the day from some spooky monsters. Doesn't get much better than that. But perhaps controversially above it, at number 6, Goosebumps from 2015. After moving to a small town, Zach meets his next door neighbor, Hannah, who happens to be the daughter of best-selling Goosebumps series author R.L. Stine. They accidentally unleashed the real monsters from his books across their town, and in collaboration with R.L. Stine, they've got to stop them. Now, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Goosebumps. I loved the Goosebumps books so much, like by far my favorite thing to read in my entire childhood. Like I just remember being so excited just to go to the library so that I could get some more Goosebumps books. And now as an adult, I still have a bunch of them and I'm so happy to have them. These Goosebumps means so much to me, and I also really enjoyed the TV show. It's corny and super low budget kids TV from the 90s, but I still do enjoy it. So I was really excited they were actually making like a theatrical version of Goosebumps, and I gotta say, when I saw it, I wasn't disappointed. Now, it isn't a whole lot like the books or like the show. If you want some kind of one-to-one adaptation, I mean, I don't even know how you could do that because Goosebumps is just a huge collection of books. You just have to pick like one story. But they did a good job kind of bringing the spirit of Goosebumps, bringing in a bunch of the monsters. And they especially did a great job with Slappy, who is, of course, the icon, the mascot of Goosebumps. And they got a really good version of him here. I really like Jack Black. I think Jack Black has had a great like transition into family movies in recent years. And he's really fun as R.L. Stine. Not much like the real R.L. Stine, but that's okay. This is just a very fun run around the city, try to stop monsters kind of movie with very fun characters. And I like the sequel, Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween, as well. Not quite as much as this one, but it's actually got more Halloween atmosphere, so that's a good option as well. Cracking into the top 5, we've got Corpse Bride from 2005. Set in a 19th century European village, this is a stop motion film that follows the story of Victor, a young man whisked away to the underworld to wed a mysterious corpse bride. There are a lot of stop motion animated films that people love for the Halloween season. There's Nightmare Before Christmas, Paranorman, Coraline, all good options. But none of those are as close to my heart as they are for a lot of other people. Now, Nightmare Before Christmas is my son's number one right now. He loves that. He's obsessed with Jack Skellington. But Corpse Bride is my favorite. I think this is the best of the bunch. This one is actually directed by Tim Burton, while Nightmare Before Christmas was not, but a lot of people think it was. This is a Tim Burton film starring Johnny Depp as Victor and Helena Bonham Carter as the Corpse Bride, of course. And I just love the look of this movie so much. Now, it is such a dark, desaturated, gloomy feel to it for so much of the film until they actually go into the underworld of the dead. And that's where things get much more lively and colorful, which I think is a good representation of how Tim Burton just connects to the spooky in all things and does not connect to normalcy. But the characters are really fun in here. I love the Corpse Bride so much. And there actually is some good romantic stuff in here, some really good music, like it's a musical, and the songs I think are a lot better than the songs in Nightmare Before Christmas. That's just me. Corpse Bride is fantastic. Number 4, The House with the Clock in Its Walls from 2018. When 10-year-old Lewis is suddenly orphaned, he is sent to live with his uncle Jonathan in a creepy old mansion with ticking clocks. Upon discovering that his uncle is a warlock, Lewis begins learning magic as well, but accidentally resurrects an evil warlock that they've all got to stop. I feel like I'm saying that so many times with this plot, like, oh no, monsters are unleashed and they got to stop them. That's kind of what kids' horror movies are like so much of the time. But this movie is an interesting case. It only came out a few years ago, and it's directed by Eli Roth. Yes, the guy who made movies like Cabin Fever and Hostel and Thanksgiving from a couple of years ago. He almost exclusively makes extremely gory, offensive, hard R horror movies. But he did make this kids movie, this PG kids film starring Jack Black, and It's great. Like, it kind of makes me wish that more horror directors would make kids movies, because they would just make them just a little scarier than they probably should be. And that is the case with this movie. I mean, if you compare it to like 80s kids movies, I guess it's not that scary, but compared to kids movies today, it's kind of scary. And I'm a huge fan of this movie. I think the main kid is so likable and sympathetic, but his uncle, played by Jack Black, along with the uncle's friend, who's played by Cate Blanchett, they're the best. Like, I would have never guessed that Jack Black and Cate Blanchett would be like a dream team BFF witch and warlock in a kids movie type people, but they're so good in this movie. And the evil warlock is played by Kyle MacLachlan, so shout out David Lynch fans everywhere. I think that's awesome, and he's great here too. The House with a Clock in Its Walls is such a sweet, emotional story that goes a little darker than you think it should, and it's got a scene where they have to fight a bunch of sentient jack-o'-lanterns, so it truly doesn't get better than that. Number 3, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad from 1949. So this is 2 different half-hour animated shorts put out by Disney. One is based on The Wind in the Willows, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and the other based on Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Now, I did feel like I had to handicap this a little bit because the first half is not spooky at all. It's just The Wind in the Willows. But the second half could be my favorite kids horror thing ever produced. Sleepy Hollow, as done by Disney, as narrated by Bing Crosby, it's just one of the greatest things ever put to film. Like, I love the story of Sleepy Hollow so much. I love the Headless Horseman. And this is actually a pretty faithful adaptation of that short story. Just, of course, a quicker version of it. But it's got great versions of Ichabod Crane and Brom Bones and Katrina Van Tassel and the Headless Horseman. All the classic characters. It is a musical. It's got 3 songs. They're all 3, I think, some of the best songs that Disney has ever done. I love these songs so much. And come on, Sleepy Hollow, it's just like the best ghost story of all time. This movie rules. The runner-up on the list, Casper from 1995. Casper is a friendly ghost who peacefully haunts a mansion in Maine. But when the house is left in a will to a greedy, evil woman, she hires a ghost therapist to come in and exorcise the house. But the therapist, along with his daughter, might just make friends with the ghosts. I think this is one of the best family films ever made. I mean, the cast, you've got Bill Pullman as the ghost therapist, the dad here, but Christina Ricci is his daughter, and Christina Ricci, she's just like the queen of spooky kids horror. We'll talk about her again very soon. They're great characters, but I love the ghosts in this mansion. The atmosphere of this mansion is just like one of the best looking haunted houses I've ever seen, both inside and out. And outside of the house, I mean, the movie is extremely autumnal. It's just got leaves blowing in the wind absolutely everywhere, bright, vivid trees. I just love everything about how this movie looks, but it is very fun. It is very sweet. It's got lots of laughs, and the effects are great. They hold up so well. This is honestly, unironically, one of my favorite haunted house movies, okay? It like literally is. This is one of the few films that I do watch every single Halloween season without fail. That'll probably never change. Also, my son really loves this movie, so it's really fun to watch it with him now. At number 1, Addams Family Values from 1993. And also the original Addams Family. You can call it a tie between the two, but I definitely think Addams Family Values is the better of the two by far. Wednesday and Pugsley Addams will stop at nothing to get rid of their new baby brother, adored by their parents, Gomez and Morticia. But things go from bad to worse when the new nanny launches a plan to marry their uncle for potentially sinister reasons. I am a huge fan of the Addams Family. The original 1960s show, these movies. There was actually an animated film that came out a few years ago that was pretty good too. Not the sequel to it. That was real bad. But the first animated one was pretty good. But these movies are just absolutely quintessential family-friendly horror. Addams Family Values is actually PG-13, which I almost disqualified PG-13 movies from this list before I realized that. And I'm not disqualifying the Addams Family by any means. I just love these characters so much. I just love how kooky and spooky and you know the drill. The theme song is so great. But the way that they're so obsessed with all things dark and macabre and they say everything the opposite, there's always a lot of great laughs there. But the cast of this movie is absolutely spectacular. Everyone is amazing as these characters. You got Christina Ricci back again as Wednesday. She really is just the queen of kids horror movies. Absolutely. Queen of the 90s. Christina Ricci. I love Christina Ricci. But I think there's just no question that Addams Family Values has the way better plot of the two. I love Joan Cusack as the Black Widow who's trying to marry Fester and has all these sinister plans, and watching the Addams family go up against somebody evil but really not be bothered by that because they love evil stuff is so funny. It's a hilarious film. And it's a great Thanksgiving movie because there's a whole summer camp sequence involving a Thanksgiving play. This like one of the greatest things ever committed to film. I love that so much. That's my list, but what kids horror movies do you love around the season? I feel like this list is super subjective. So which ones did you grow up with and do you still love? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you want some more videos like this, check out this video right here for some Halloween recommendations, or this playlist for more of my best of lists. And if you enjoyed this, definitely give a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to you and to my patrons, and have a wonderful Halloween season.